Hi to everyone, guys. Can everybody hear me?
Hello, yes.
Okay. I think you can see my screen now. So we already started the recording, okay. So today we have the last lection for the first attestation for the development of the front-end side. Starting from the next week, we have the 2 weeks our exams, and after that we'll start backside of the web development. So that's why today we have the many topics that we have to cover. One of them is routers. The second one is reactive programming. What is the services and what is the observables and so on. Okay, for that, so let's go to our file. So the examples 21, week number 6. So let's create G1 and move this folder to the G1. G2. And we want to create a new application. Let's do it like same as before, same as in previous example. So the application will be the demo router HTTP. So we will configure the routing, that's why yes, and CSS. So in previous examples, we already said the configuration of the routing yes, but we don't use any news from the any functionality from the routers. So today we have to cover this topic at the first, and we'll continue without the examples. So let's wait for a while. Okay. Go into the folder and WebStorm started from this location, from current location. About the structure of the empty project, you already know. So we want to remove all the things inside of the HTML except the router outlet. And I think that's it. So we have the inside of the app model, we have the configuration for the routing. So we have the routing model in this file, which will cover here ng model configuration decorator over here. That will decorate this class, which is called app routing model. And we have the two metadata here. So the first one is the import and second one is export. While importing, we'll import our own routes also here. This routes array will be used for setting our own routes. And while importing, we'll import our own routes also, and export will be cover all the routes that we have inside our application. And like this, your Angular project will know about your all the newly created routes. So have imported here two classes, routes and router modules. Okay. So let's serve it. Okay. Okay, let's open it here. connect it with our HTML. Yeah. Okay. We don't have any data here because we removed all the things inside of the app component. App components over here. If you write something here, it will be happens. Okay, it works. So first of all, we have to start. We want to start from the routing model. It's about the routing file we discussed already. So this model will be imported in the import section in our main configuration file, which is the app model. Inside of the imports, it is automatically added this model by the command line. And after that, you can use your routings. So, okay, for the routings, let's create, let's generate the components like home, about. So I have these two components, home and about. So if I am typing here app home, it will render the home component here. If I'm writing here app about, it will render about component also here. But I want to do it like changing the URL. For instance, if I am typing here like a home, I want to render I want to render only home component. And if it's only about, I want to render only about component. For this, I have to write inside of the roads array our URLs, our roads. So if you see roads object over here, it's just a type of the declaration that array of roads, which is a road interface here, and here we have the arrays, which is a constant variable, which is roads. If you open the road interface will have the different type of properties. The different type of properties which will be used today for creation of the new roads. So as we can see here, we have the array. So we have the list of objects. So inside of the object, we have two main required options. So two main required keys. First of them is path. Keyword, it's a path. Value should be the string, for instance, home, which is a URL path. For instance, when I'm start typing something here, for instance, home, and hitting the enter, the Angular will take this URL and remove the base part, which is this part, and try to find from this array, try to find the matching URL for this address bars data, and in the path option. Inside of the path, if we have the just matching case with the path keyword, in that case will be the used component part. So I'm saying to the Angular, if inside of the URL address bar, if someone types like a home after the base URL, in that case, I want to render on the page home component. If in address bar someone types like about, in that case, I want to render about component. And it's simple, as you can see here. So if you type here home, you will have 3 times for 2 times home. Why? Because if you open your app HTML, we are manually rendering the home component on the web page and about component also manually. But this router outlet tag will do it by depending on the URLs in this section, in this list, depending on the address bars data. It will match appropriate component and render instead of this router outlet. So it's just a box which will be replaced with the different component. That's why we can remove this part, and that's it. For instance, if it's about, If it's about, will be the about component rendered. If it's a home, the home component will be rendered. And that's it for routing. For depending on the URL, you might have the different sections here. So the app component will be the it's a header part, it's a footer part, which will be the not changed. For instance, header and footer, and depending on the address bar data will be the change this section, which is located between this header and footer. Let it be like this. In a header, so I'm just writing the URL in the address bar now, but instead of typing it inside of the address bar, I want to add some items, so the menu items to select depending the page. So let's add a nav bar, which is a UL. Inside of the UL, we have the LI link to some address. So let it be home. Inside of the home, Angular will give you a new directive called router link. Inside of the router link, you can write the link that you have inside of this array. So if it's a home, you can write like starting from the base URL. It means starting from the root URL. If someone types home, so if someone clicks to this item, so let's remove this one. To this item, we want to go to this URL, and Angular will check the URLs, and depending on it, it will render the component. Let's do it for about also. Okay, if you click to the about, as you can see, depending on the click, they change it, the address bar and the rendering the component. Okay, I think it's clear. So what else? If I'm removing all the things here, as you can see in the box in the content, we don't have any data, which means if it's a root, we don't have any URL. That's why the app component, instead of the router outlet, will just print out empty string, which is just nothing. For instance, you can do it like you can have the option like if path is like empty, which is the root one without anything. In that case, I want to redirect it to home. And one more option, which is a path match, which will have the different values. One of them is full. What does it mean full? Full means this string is empty, but any other things can also be empty, starting from the empty. For instance, home also starts from the empty string. About also starts from the empty string. That's why we have to set path match as a full, because the whole address bar should be matched to this empty string. In that case, we want to redirect to the home. And after that, if you remove this one and hit enter, it will automatically redirect it to the home page if you have the empty root URL inside of your application. And redirect and path match, they are the optional attributes of the route object. But path and component should be, so the path will be the required, the component in this case, as you can see, also not exist, because we are just redirecting. So one more thing here. For instance, what would be if I am typing, so if I am typing manually something that is not exist? In that case, you will have the error that this URL cannot be matched, and that's why you cannot match any routes. That's why it will throw the error. For such situations, so let's create a new component called not found. Not found, and for such situations, we have inside of the Angular routers, we have the pattern like two times star sign will identify all the not existing URLs inside of this array. In that case, I want to render the not found component. If you will type something which is not exist, it will not throw the error, but it will just print out the not found page, which will give some information about the 44, which is a not found page. But what is critical inside of the rows? What you have to do? What you have to pay your attention? If you put it in the first case, in the first place, which is a not found over here, even you will have the correct URL, you will have the not found page rendered. Why? Because inside of the routers array, the sequence order is very critical. Angular works like this. It will take this address bar data, and it will try to find, starting from the first object, it will try to start checking this address data and your path value. If we have the match, it's a first match. It will just render the first component, and that's it. It will not go to check the other items. That's why when you are writing some URLs, you will have to pay attention. You pay attention for the sequence order when you are writing a path, because the best practice says that the not found should be at the end of this array. Why? Because for Angular, Angular should check all the values that we have inside of this array, and after that, if it's not matching any path, in that case we want to the print out so the not found component over here. And in this case, it will work perfectly. And if you are writing something like this, you will have the not found page without any errors, which is what we need. Okay, such like configurations you might have in the routing model in your application. So, okay, the home page, about page, these pages are just static pages that can be just marked up using the HTML and CSS. But what we have is we want to create a component called posts. Today we have some little blog application which will be used for showing the blogs over here. So inside of the roads, I want to add new path, which is a posts. In that case, I want to render the posts component. Okay, let's add a menu item. So the posts here. And if you click to this button, you will have the list of items here. Okay, so let's open the post component and we'll work inside of this component for now. Before going to this file, let's start for creating TypeScript file for models. Inside of the models, we want to create an interface, so export interface for the post object, which will have the ID, which is a number, title, which is a string, and body of the post, which is also a string. Okay, we have the one interface, which is a post. Why we are adding the export? Because we have to import it in other files, like in our example here. So, except the models, we want to create one more TS file, which is a posts fake DB, or just fake DB. Let it be like fake DB. And in this file, I want to also export constant variable, which is a posts as in our heroes example from the official tutorial. Posts will be also the post object that we just created inside of the models. This interface posts constant will be the type of the post array and equals to some data. For instance, ID will be the one, so the title will be the title one, and body. So for body, let's open the HTML and write lorem and copy this one, put it inside of the body value, and I think it will be enough. The first sentences will be enough. Okay, let's copy. I think the 4 it will be enough. So like this. Okay, just a second. Okay, we created a fake DB file which will have the one constant value, which is a posts. And what we have to do is we want to just use it inside of the posts component. Posts component to let it be posts, which is a post array. And inside of the ng init, we want to do it like these posts equals to posts from the fake DB. Okay, and inside of HTML file, we want to list all the items. So we know about the ng4 let posts of posts, and here we have the post ID and post title. And as you can see here, if I'm changing the URLs, you will have the other data, but when we have the post, inside of the post we'll have our fake data from this file, fake DB file, and we are inside of the ng init. We are just updating the value of this array. Okay, about this you already know. So let's move on, and we want to create one more component, post detail. Let's create this one. Okay, what we want to do is when I'm clicking to one of these items, I want to open new URL, and inside of this new page, I want to show the detailed version of the selected item. For instance, if I'm selecting the one, title one, this should be open the detail page of the post, and it will show except of the ID and title, it will show also the body of the post. So for this, we created a post detail component. Inside of the post detail component, we want to create one property, which is a post. Data type should be also post. Okay. And inside of the HTML, let's mark up it. For instance, post detail. Post detail will be ID should be imported here. Post ID. Let it be post title over here, and post body will be over here. Okay, this data will be rendered when we have the post detail component. But inside of the post detail component, if we have this post as an input, we'll have inside of this page. But we want to change our URL when we select one item from this list. It means we have to add one more road. Road will be route will be like this. Posts, and after posts, we have the nested data in the URL, which will be the ID. What does it mean? Columns here, which means this data. If it's like this, it will match the URL like posts and ID word like this. As you can see here, we have the ID word, and this post and ID will be matched over here. That's why it will rendering the post component again. But when we are putting the columns here, it means this data will be the dynamically changed. For instance, if you are changing like this, it might be ID the something else. If small, so will be the something else. And as you can see here, we have the list. It might be some number. It will be also the matching the data, because ID means the column and ID. Instead of the ID, you can put anything. It's just a name of the variable. In our case, it's the ID of the selected post. If URL located like a post and ID, in this case, we want to render the post detail component. And as you can see here, it says cannot read property ID of undefined, which means inside of the detail component, we have the HTML file, and inside of the HTML we have the ID. Here we have the post ID, and it says, as we post don't describe it any before, that's why it cannot read the ID of the selected item. That's why let's put like div ng if we have the post, only in that case we want to render this data. And as you can see, we don't have any error anymore. And as you can see here, we have some data, which is a some ID, but we don't set any post object inside of the post detail. This object is undefined for now. That's why we don't have any data. So our task is to get this ID from the URL and try to get the data from the database depending on this ID. So for that, we have the two options. Inside of the detail component. So before this, I want to add links inside of the product list. Inside of the product list, we have only the messages like paragraphs, and instead of this, I want to add references like in our menu. So we know about the router link, and we have the posts as we described in our routing model. Posts and ID. We have to describe it like posts and ID. In that case, we will render the post detail. That's why I'm saying that posts, and instead of the ID, I want to render post.id. And if you see the elements here, H reference, as you can see here, post and /ID, /1. If you open this next one, /2, and so on. So it's the first option. You have the two options here. When you are using a router link, you have the two options. The first option, when we are just building the string using our values. The second one is like this. In second one, we have the router link as an input. Inside of the router link, we have the array of the variables, which will be joined as a URL. The first one is posts. The second one is post ID. This router link will have the list of items. It might be, for instance, something else, for instance, some other data, for instance, AAA. It doesn't matter. For instance, if you open the URL here, as you can see here, it will just join all the values inside of this array. For instance, posts 1 and 1, it's a post ID. The second, and after that, it's a 1 to 3, as you can see here, and after that, it's AAA. So this array can have any number of data, and all data inside of this array will be joined as a URL like this. That's why, so I will remove this unneeded data because we have only post and post ID. And as you can see here, we have the same result as before, post/1, which is the post one as in the previous example. It depends on you. For instance, if you will have here, for instance, ID2 or so ID3, in that case, you can pass them here like this in the array. Or in the previous example, you will have the such like a syntaxes for adding something else. It depends on you. So you have the like two options here. So let's remove the other IDs. Okay, so I think it's clear. So after that, if you click to this button, it will go to the posts and one. But inside of the post detail, we don't have any logic. That's why we don't have any rendering data. Even we have the markup for the post details, and we have the ngIf. So for getting this one from the address bar, we have the different type of options. So Angular router model will give you ability to create to use a class called activated route. So you can read about it. So where is the browser? So Angular activated route. So about it, you can read at your home. What is this? So this activated route will store all the data about the current page URL, current page route, and you can get any data from this URL. That's why we want to inject this class inside of our post detail component. What does it mean, inject? Inject means, so about the Angular application, inside of the Angular application, we have the dependency injection. So Angular dependency injection. So we have to read about it. What is this? So what for we are working with the dependency injection system inside of the Angular application. So inside of the Angular application, we have the dependency injection. What does it mean? It means inside of this system, so inside of the dependency injection system, we might have the different type of classes. So different type of classes that can be used inside of any component that you created over here. So when we are creating a class of the object, for instance, if you have the class like a person, you will create the object of the person like this. For instance, P2 equals to new person, and so on. But this is not recommended and not a proper way to use classes that will be the used whole of the application. So that's why just removing this keyword new, you can use a dependency injection and dependency injection classes that can be just injected in your class. What does it mean injected? It means just can be created but without any new keyword. How? You can do it inside of the constructor. We are creating a variable. So it's a private variable, which is let it be, name will be the route. And the class is activated route. So activated route located inside of the Angular router model. This activated route will store all the data that we have inside of the URL. So we have here params and so on. So now we will see the result. For instance, log this route. So if you see just this route, you will have the activated route, and inside of this object, you will have all the data that we need for the URL's state. For instance, one of them is just snapshot. For instance, inside of the snapshot, as you can see here, we have the params object. Inside of the params, we have the ID, which is the 1. If you change it to the 2, you will have the params as a 2. Okay, it means inside of the snapshot, we might have the access to this URL's data, which means so it might be params. So the params map. If you see the params map, inside of the params map, we'll have just the needed data that we have inside of the URL. Params map and get ID. And as you can see, we have the two which we passed in the URL. For instance, if it's a 123, which will be the 123. So, okay, we got the ID of the selected post, which means constant ID equals to this one. But if you see the type of ID, type of ID says string. Why? Because inside of the URL we don't have any data type. That's why it will be converted. So it will be extracted as a string. For converting it to the number, you have the different options. One of them is just putting the plus sign before the variable. And after that, it will just convert this item if it's a convertible again. If it's a convertible, it will be just converted to the number and ID becomes as a number. Why? Because inside of the database, ID in our case is number. It's not string. That's why we want to convert it to the number, which is the ID here. And after that, we want to set this post, which is this element, equals to posts, which is our fake data variable, posts filter. So it's not a filter, it might be just a find x. So x ID equals to ID. Okay, as you can see here, so ID inside of the URL, we have the 123, which is not exist inside of the BackDB. If you are putting like 1, you will have the result. If you are clicking to the second one, the URL changed, 2 will be extracted from the database, will be found the second element, and post will be updated. If it's a post updated, the detail will be post showed the selected item. And as you can see here, we have the result for selecting the items from the database and using the URL's data. Okay, I think this is clear. Okay, but we have the snapshot disadvantages of the snapshot. Why? Because snapshot by its name says this will be stored in this object in the snapshot object will be stored only the first rendering data of the component. It means post detail component, which is this component, will store only those items, so only those state of the component when it was initialized. Which means if I am getting this ID here, and after that, if I am changing the value, you don't have any changes. You don't have any item here. So for instance, if you have the 4, if you have the other data, it cannot be returned and it cannot be rendered. That's why snapshot, it might be useful in some cases, but if you have the dynamically changed IDs in the the post detail page, in that case you have to do it using the second option. The second option says this road map params map. Params map itself, it's an observable object. Observable means it will be returned about the Angular. So Angular observable, you have to also read at your home to understand what is observable. Observable provides support the passing the message between the parts of the applications. So as you can see here, we have the message from the URL to our component. In that case, we'll have the observable object. That's why observable objects can be subscribed. So can be subscribed. And in the subscribed, we'll have the params object. Params objects, and inside of the params, if you console log these params, you will have the params object like this. perhaps object which was changed over here. For instance, if it's a 4, it will be the 4. And after that, we'll do the same thing as before. For getting the ID, for instance, constant ID equals to plus sign params gets ID. We are extracting the ID from the params and converting it to the ID. And we'll do the same thing as before for selecting the item. And we have the two options. The first one is snapshot. The second one is using subscribe. And second one is better. Why? Because the second one will work for any cases. But first one will work only if and only if you have the detailed post detail page will not have any changing the URLs in itself, its component. We are changing URLs inside of the post list. That's why a snapshot will also work. Okay, move on. So I think this is clear. So as you can see from these examples, if I'm clicking to the second one, I have to return it using return the previous example using the post or using this back button from the browser. So if you click this back button, you can also go back to the list. So just simulate this button inside of the detail page. Inside of the detail page, so let's add some button. Go back button. When we click this button, we have to call the function called go back. And let's implement this button, this function. For implementing this function, it means, so I have to, so implementing this button, and for implementing the same thing as this button, the back button from the browser, we have the one more class that can be helpful in this case, which is also can be injected to your class, so which is the route location. It's just the name of the variable, and the library called, so the class called location. So location class which located inside of the Angular common. Angular common, this location will give you ability. This location will give you ability to simulate the same thing as before. These two buttons, for instance, back button and forward button. As you can see here, we have the such like options. Back button. If you click this button, it will be the same thing as this from the browser's button. Okay, I think also clear. So let's move on. So what we want to do now. So I think about the URL, about the URLs, everything is clear. So the passing the data to the URL and getting it from the needed component. So it's also clear. So now we have to move to observable inside of the services. So Angular services. So Angular service, you have to also read about it at your home. So in our case, we have the heroes example and why service. Service means when we have inside of the, for instance, if you open our posts component, which is a list of items, inside of this component, we are saying that this posts equals to posts, which means data binded to the variable, to the property inside of the component, which is a not recommended way and not correct way for doing the well application. Why? Because the component will not take care about the data. So about fetching a data, for getting a data, for generating or any data. So inside of the Angular, we have the such like section called services. So services. So services, it's just a classes, or you might think about it like a bridge between your component and between your data. So data might come from any resources. It might come from some files. It might come from some other resources from other servers. So you will have the different, for instance, you will have the two servers, so backsides, the first one for authentication, the second one for getting the list of products and so on. For executing or for fetching this such like a data or for updating the data should be executed should be done inside of the services. That's why so we want to generate new service. For generating a service, you have to call the command ng generate service and let it be just post service, and it will create two files. The first one is test file for the service. The second one is service file itself. If you open, you will have just simple class called post service, which is decorated using the injectable interface. So injectable interface, by its name, it can be clear that this decorator will add your class to the dependency injection system. As in our example, like we said about the route, activated route and location, they are already added to the dependency injection system inside of the Angular application. Now you are creating your own class that is also should be inside of the dependency injection system inside of your application. For that, so the command line will generate this class, an injectable decorator, which will add this class to the dependency injection system. And this metadata, which says this class can be seen inside of any component that is located over here. Any component, which is the root one, provided inside of the root means inside of the root folder, inside of the any component can be used this class as an injected class. That's it. That's it. And the purpose of this service is just fetching a data from some resources and passing it to the component. Okay, let's refactor our code, starting from the post list. From the post list, we don't need to assign it like directly like this. For this, let's create inside of the post service the function called getPosts. Inside of the getPosts, we want to return it. So it's just a posts from the fake data. In our case, it's just a one file. So our fake file, db file. From this file, I want to return these posts to the component. So for using this post service inside of your component, in our case, it's post component, we have to inject it. Inject it like activated record and like location. So that's why I have to create here the posts. So the post service, it's just the name of the variable. And injecting it is posts service like this. And that's it. Post service can be used inside of your application for calling any function which is implemented here. In our case, we have only one function which will return the list of items. So instead of this, so inside of the ng init, I want to call the getPosts function. So this getPost function. Let's implement it. And in this function, this posts equals to so this post service getPosts. Okay, that's it. Inside of the ng init, it's recommended to use a minimum quote, or so the logic should be inside of the separate files, separate functions. So the single responsibility principles. So you have to implement the getPosts separately as a separate function, and you have to just call it because inside of the ng init you might have the other calls also, other logic and other initializing part of also. And in this case, this file, this import don't need anymore. That's why we can remove it. And that's it. So we are doing the same thing, but using the service. So the list also shown as like before, but using the service. So let's do the same thing for the detail page. For the detailing page, we have the connection between the posts, and here we have the ID and so on. As you can see here, inside of the ng init, we have the logic which is not correct. We have to create a function called getPost. Inside of the getPost, we have to copy this one. So let's command copy, put it over here. So inside of the ng route, subscribe ID, and after getting the ID from the URL, I want to call the services function, but we don't have any function. That's why I created. So the get post, which will have the ID as a number argument, and return. So the posts find okay, X ID should be equal to ID. So we have this actually like a comparison. So the get post, which means ID will come, and we want to find this ID inside of this list. And this function will be used inside of the detail component. So this post equals to, for using a service, we have to inject it. So the private, so the post service, and after that we can use it, post service, get post, and we want to pass ID here. Okay, that's it, and this function should be called inside of the ng-init. This get post. And if you click to this one of the items, you can see the result as before, but in this case we are doing it in the right way, which is using the post service, which will handle all the actions with the data. So inside of the components, we don't have any connection to the database or any connection to the other streams from there, from where we get the data and so on. So this is a right way for working with the data inside of the components. Okay, I think it's also clear. So the time is, so the one is just a second. Okay, what we have now. So we have the service, which will give the ability to getting a data from some resource. In our case, it's just a static file, and doing just the simple actions. So let's continue. And what we want to cover now is just a reactive programming, which is a Angular observable. Angular observable, it's you have to also read about it at your home. The observables provide support for passing a message between the parts of the applications. As you guess now, observables will do almost the similar task like in our services. So we said about the services. So services is just a bridge between the component and between your data. And observable says provide support for passing a message between the parts of the application, which means when you are using a service, inside of the service you have to use only the observables. So which means observables can give the ability to pass the data between the components. That's why when we are so let's go here. So how can we update the data inside of this array? So that this post array equals to something, which means this logic will work synchronously, which means posts will wait for a returning part from this post service get post function. But we said about the services logic, so that service can send some requests, for instance, HTTP requests to the backend side, and to get a list of posts from the backside. In such case, this returning part will be with some delay, because we cannot guarantee that the server will respond synchronously at the moment. And that's why this type of assigning the value from the service, which is also not correct. Why? Because we cannot guarantee the execution time of the server side, because inside of the server we'll have the request to the server side. To simulate this logic, let's use a function called off inside of the Angular, which is inside of the section RxJS, the off function will just simulate the response of the HTTP client, HTTP request. For instance, if you are sending an HTTP request to some server, in that case, you will have some observable object, which can be executed at a few times later. So this off function, as you can see, will return the observable T, which means any general data type. In our case, we are just simulating that this fake DB located in other machine, and we want to get it from other machine, and we are rendering. So we are using observable, which means these posts returned as the observable object, which is inside of the reactive programming, inside of the RxJS. So after that, if you open our posts component, it says it cannot be assigned because this getPosts function will return the observable object, and this part of the code cannot be assigned to the variable. Why? Because this is a not constant value. So just observable, which is as in our detail, we have here params map, which is also observable, as you can see, observable. And observables can only be subscribed. That's why we have to subscribe this function. Subscribe this function and wait for the result, because we are saying using this service, we want to call this function. Inside of this function, we are returning the observable, which is a request to the server side, and subscribe means we want to wait for the result, but we don't stop the main process of our application. It's just a callback of the function. So the main application will not work, will not wait for the response from the server. We have to implement it inside of the subscribe. Inside of the subscribe, we want to get a list of posts. And after getting list of posts, we want to log it. And as you can see here, we have the 4 objects, which is over here, return it using the observable. And we want to just update posts equals to posts, and that's it. That's it, and you will have the same result. But in our case, we have the one more refactoring of our code and one more doing the correct version of the getting data from the using the services and using the observables. Okay, in this case, which is the correct and perfect version of the getting data from the server using a service. So we have this function, which is observable, returning the observable object, and we are just subscribing it and getting data and updating the variable. Let's do it the same thing for the detail part. Inside of the detail part, we have ID number here. So let's create constant task equals to, or not a task, it's just a post, isn't it? So post, which is like this, and when we are returning the data, we want to use also post or off function to return observable. If you click to this item, as you can see, we don't have any data because the post get post, and it says assigned expression observable is not assignable to the post. So this cannot be assigned like this. You have to just like subscribe as before, and we are expecting one item, which is a post, and this post will be updated. Like this. And as you can see here, we have the same result as before, but in our case, we are just doing the correct version of getting data from the server. Okay, I think it's also clear. Okay, the time is okay. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, we simulated inside of the post service, we simulated the server-side response using the off function. But now we want to implement it real request. Implement it using the real request. For that, we want to use Angular HTTP client model. HTTP client model, which will be located inside of the Angular common HTTP. This object can be injected in any class after doing some configurations. First of them, to use the HTTP client inside of your application, you have to open app model as always and add it inside of the imports. Let's add HTTP client model. And this is just one configuration that you have to do to work, to use the HTTP client inside of your application. Okay, and after that, to sending any request in any class, you have to inject the HTTP client object. Let's inject. So as you can see here, we have the nested inject. So post service itself inject class. But inside of the inject class, we want to inject one item, which is let it be client HTTP client, not model. It's just the object of the client, which is not Selenium. It's just a common HTTP object, and that's it. This client object will give you ability to send any type of requests, get, post, put, or any others. So let's save this part and comment it and do the same thing, but in this case we want to instead of getting the data from the our constant file, we want to send a request to the other resource. So for instance, inside of the client, if you type dot, you will have the different type of method types. For instance, getting the data, you can send a get request. For creating, you can send a post request. For updating, you can send a put request. For deleting, you can send a delete request. Okay, if you see all these HTTP requests will be observable. As you can see here, observable and general data type as in previous examples. All the functions, all the HTTP requests will return the observable data type, like this off function. As you can see, off function, it's just a reactive programming function, which will just simulate the same thing, but HTTP clients will also do the same thing. If you see, for instance, post request will also return the observable. And that's why we are simulating at first, and after that showing the real request. So okay, for getting a data for this resource, we want to use JSON placeholder data, as you see from the lab work explanation. We have here the different type of data. One of them is posts. And this link will return all the list of, as you can see here, array of objects. Each object will have such like a data, but in our models, we have only ID, title, and body as then our interface. But in this case, we have the user ID also. But as we described it, only ID, title, and body. ID, title, body will be extracted, and user ID will be just skipped while we are parsing a data from this resource. So let's copy this URL. Let's copy this URL, and we want to instead of this off, we want to use this client. We want to send a get request to this URL, and this is just sending a data for the so sending a get request to this URL, which means when I'm opening from the browser, it's also the get request. So this type of request says object is missing for following the posts length, pop, and so on. So if you are seeing inside of the posts component, we are doing this post equals to post, which means what goes from this request, because this function will return, so we'll call this function, so the client object, and it will return some data. And this data we are assigning to the post object, which is an array of this post interface. And it says it cannot identify this returned part, because in the returning part we are not doing anything. That's why we have to write some explanation data for this function. But in our example, even we have the warning here. In our example on the right side, you can see the result. As you can see, we have the how many? We have the 100 posts, and we have here result. All the posts are showed here. But for proper working and for best practices, you have to do like for getting a posts, we are saying that it should return observable object, which is a list of post items. List of post items. And after that, this is just the returning part of the function. And for the get HTTP request, we have here different type of URLs and option and so on, and you can set data type that should be getted from this request. For instance, post list of posts, and that's it. In this list of posts, so let's run it again. In this list of posts, this type of so this URLs data, so such like a JSON, will be converted to this our interface, and without any manually converting it or just parsing it from this URL. So this JSON data will be converted to our post object, array of post objects, and can be passed to our component. And as you can see here, without any errors, without any warnings, these posts can be immediately, without any execution, without any pre-processing, can be assigned to the post array. Why? Because we are saying that this should be returned part, this should be just parsing from this resource. Okay, I think this is clear. So as you can see here, we have the 100 options, 100 posts here. Now, when I am clicking to the one item, so it says, it shows from the previous files data, because we have here we don't have any requests here. We are working with the file. That's why if you click to the other data, you will not have any data, because at 20 we don't have any ID inside of the file. That's why let's change the get post also to the request. So return this. This client get request. Get request says we want to expect only one item of the post. Returning part should be also will be the observable and one item of the post. And URL, if you see inside of the guideline, so if you click to the guide, you will getting a resource. It says posts and /ID, which returns one object of the list. For instance, if you open this page, it will return only one object. That's why we are expecting only one post here, and observable will be returning part also will be like this. So let's copy this URL and put it over here. But this ID part should be dynamic. That's why let's change this to the backslash. So the back quota sign. And instead of 1, we want to put the ID. And that's it. ID, and if you open the tail page, we are just subscribing without any changes. It should work. If you open this one, it will show. If you open this one, it will also show. Okay, so let's copy. Let's create here base URL variable. Base URL will be stored this part because we don't need to copy and paste all this thing. That's why we want to do it like in proper way. So base URL slash posts. Here I have the base URL. Base URL slash posts and ID. And okay, as you can see here, we have the any item. Any item can be selected. And while we are selecting, we are sending a request. So we are sending a request get post, and it will return the observable and will subscribe it and update the needed data. So if you open HTML file of the post item, if you so it's a post. Let's open a post item, post detail. If you remove this post ID, post checking, if checking, and if you click to the any item, you will have the error. Why? Cannot read property I or ID. If you open another thing, you will also have the same error. Why? Because while we are rendering of our component, so post detail component, it will try to render this HTML file on the web page. So it says it want to open the post ID, post title, post something else. But in our case, it says post ID. Why? Because it will start from the post ID. That's why it will says that ID of undefined. It means post is undefined. Why? Because post will be available only after getting the data from the resource over here. And this part says the post will be only available after getting a response from the server side. That's why it says error. If you don't add this ngIf part, you will get such like error. If you add this ngIf part, this part will be rendered, and this ID accessing for the ID property will be done if and only if we have the post object. And in that case, you will not have any error, but you will have some delay because after getting a request from the client side, before they're getting a response from the server, you will wait for a while. So for this, let's create a variable called loaded, which is a Boolean. So this loaded variable will be started. So when we start sending a request, this loaded variable will be false, which is not loaded yet. And after getting this data from the server, this loaded value will be true, which means we already loaded the data. So let's use, instead of the post, loaded value. If it's loaded, we want to use this item. If it's not loaded, ngIf which is not loaded, in that case, loading item, loading post. And as you can see here, we have the message. We have the message when we are sending a request, and before getting a response, we'll have such like a message loading a post, such like a message, and after that, after getting a data, it will be just replace it with the needed data. Instead of the loading post, it might be loader on the web page. It might be anything, but I don't spend time for the CSS and so on. You can do it by adding the loading icons on the web page or any other things. But we have to understand that this loading part will be started before sending a request over here, and this service will send a request. After getting the request, this loaded will be true. And we can do the same thing you can do the same thing in the post. So the this loaded will be the false before sending the request, and after getting the response, we'll have to set it to the true. And in the posts list, we want to ng if if it's loaded, only in that case we want to show the list. If it's not loaded, ng if not loaded, loading, so post list. And as you can see here, if I am refreshing the page, we have the little bit time for getting a response from the server side, and in that case we have some loader here. So inside about the CSS of the loader, you can think about it and you can do it by yourself at your home. Okay, what else? The time is okay. So let's do my charger. Okay, let's move on. What we have inside, what we might have inside of the post service. So one of the tasks here, one of the CRUD tasks, which means create, read, update, and delete. CRUD means we have such like a functionality or requests, CRUD requests for any object. For instance, in our case, for post, we might have the CRUD functionality. One of them is just deleting the item, which is a delete item inside of the list. So let it be X, this button for each item, delete post. Delete post, which means here we have the X buttons for each item. Inside of the posts, so the posts component, let's implement this function. For deleting any item, we have to pass ID of the item here. So let's get ID of the number. And here we want to use our servers to delete the needed item. So let's implement inside of the post service delete post, which will get the ID of the deleted object, and what we have to expect for the deleting, you can see inside of this guideline of our server, because we don't have a real server yet. So if you go back and go to the bottom side, so the deleting the resource, you have to just send a method delete, but without any outputs. Resource will not be really to update the server, but will just fake it as if. So all the updating and adding requests to this service, so the JSON placeholder, for instance, for creating also will be just with simulation of the adding a new item. Updating will be also simulation. It will not really update the item in the server. But in your case, after finishing your backend side, it will update in the backend side also. For deleting, we have to pass such like a request. So URL will have the ID of the item which should be deleted, and method will be also deleted. Okay, let's implement it. So ID we have the observable, but the returning part is nothing. That's why let's put any. When we don't have any data from the output, we can just skip it, or you can do it like any if you want to write the returning part. So the return, so this this client, and we want to delete it. That's why we have to send a delete method. For this, inside of the HTTP client, we have the delete function. Delete, and let's put the base URL, posts, and ID. And ID as before, because ID we have here, this ID should be passed here, and here we have the example for deleting the item. And this option, this request will be delayed, but it will be not really delayed. It just simulates, which will delay the item from the server side. And this function we want to use inside of the posts component. Inside of the posts component, when we click to the some button, to some delete button here. So this post service, the post service, and delete post ID and subscribe. After subscribing, we don't have any data for returning part of this function. That's why we can do like console log deleted ID, for instance. Let's do it like this. And when I'm sending the request like this, as you can see here, deleted one will return some response after some delay. For instance, you will have also the loading message. When I'm clicking to this button, you can show the loader before the deleting, and after that you can hide it. But you can do it like very simulating for the very quickly working application, like doing the request at the background. But when we have the delay, when we want to click to this button, what we expect? We expect that this item should be deleted. So let's do it in the front side. So we want to do like this posts equals to this posts filter xid not equal to id. What I'm doing, so when I'm clicking to this button, before the sending a request, I want to delete it from the front side. And after that I want to send a request. If I will have the why I am doing like this, because if I am this code, for instance, let's click to this button, and you will have the result immediately. You will have the result immediately, but we are sending a request, as you can see here. After clicking to this button, 5/5 post will be disappeared from this page immediately, but deleted 4 will be showed a little bit later. Can you see? And here, 6 here. Why? Because this request will be also HTTP request from this our service, because we are sending HTTP request, and it will be execution time will be a little bit later. But for our clients, we are simulating that our application works perfectly without any errors and so on. But if you have some problems while deleting from this service, in that case you can get back the not deleted item and add it to the whole, so add it to the list of items again, if you will have the exception inside of the deleting part. That's why in some applications, even you are deleting some item, and when you are deleting from the front side, from the mobile phone or from the web page, it will be deleted, but after some time it will be occurs again and again. Why? Because it cannot delete it at the backside, and it was some troubles for deleting the item from the server side. That's why they will appear again and again. But we are simulating that it works perfectly, and even we have here the sending HTTP requests for deleting the items. If you refresh it, it will return the whole page, because we are just simulating the deletion of the item. Okay. The same thing for adding or for updating the something. For instance, if you want to update some item, so let it be, where is it, the tail, and I'm opening the some item here. And after opening it, I want to, instead of just printing out the title, I want to show it inside of the input. Inside of the input and ng model. Inside of the ng model. ng model, but we don't configure it yet. That's why let's open the app model and open it forms model. Forms model. After that, after that, you will have the data. Tag engine model is not. So I have to run it again, I think, because it cannot identify the ng model, even we have the configuration set it in the models, ng models. Let's run it again. Okay, as you can see here, we have the inside of the input. Inside of the input, we have our title, which can be edited. And for the saving the button, so for saving the changes, let's create a button save. When I am clicking to this button, so the update post function will be called, and this function will be implemented inside of the detail component. And so the detail component will be implemented the update post. When I'm clicking to the update post, I want to send all the updated data of the current object. In our case, it's just a post. Current object to our service, to update from the. So what is this? I think we can remove this one. Okay, we can send a request to our service to update data. For instance, update post function here. When I am updating, I want to update whole the object. It means you can see over here how can we update it. Updating the resource. So when I am updating the resource, I have to select one item, like in our URL. The method should be put, and inside of the body we have to set all the data that we want to update in a JSON format, and header should be also the JSON. And for this, it means inside of the update post, we want to get a post hold. Post itself, we want to update it. And as you can see, output should be also one object, which is updated one. That's why for the returning part, I want to get observable for one post. And return this client. And for updating, I want to use a put function. Inside of the put function, we say that it should be post. Returning part should be post. And URL will be this base URL. So the posts and ID. In our case, post ID. In our case, post ID, and it's the first argument, which is a URL. For the second argument, we have to pass data itself. In our case, post, and that's it. It can be identified that post is just a whole data that we want to update for the current object. And this function will be used inside of the detail component. This post service update post, and we want to pass the updated data. As we link it two-way data binding for the post title, it's enough to just pass this post as an argument and subscribe it as the updated post, and console log post. And you can also use our loader loaded, which is equals to false before sending a request. After sending a request, after getting a response, it should be returned to the true. And after changing the data, if you click to the save button, it will just wait for the save. For instance, if I'm adding something, and when I'm clicking to save, the loader will be showed here, and after that it will get a response. As you can see, response can be seen here, and as you can see here, we can respond it back. But when we go back, the result will be the same because the simulation, so the updating is just a simulation of the update from the server side. So the list will be the same even we are updating inside of the detail one. It's just a simulation. Okay, you can do the same thing for the adding the new items. So the time is okay. So for adding the new item, we want to add it inside of the post component. Inside of the post component, before the list, we want to add field set. So input, so input and button add post. Let it be just only one input for adding a title. For the post component, we want to create one string, which is let it be new post, which will hold inside of the new string. So the new string we want to, so new post will be the empty one at the first, and we want to bind it inside of the post. So the ng model. So here we have the two-way data binding with the ng model for the new post. And when I'm clicking to the add button, I want to call the function called add post, and let's implement this function. Add post function. Inside of the add post function, what do I want to do? I want to pass this item to the. So let's, instead of the okay, let's do it inside only using the one item. So when I'm clicking to this button, I want to send a request to the server. So for that, let's create a function inside of the service. So add post, which will also get the, I think what we have to send to the new item. So creating something. So creating something, the resource will be the, I think, let's try to send only the item. So only the title. So only the title, and title will be the just string, or it might be just post and post object. Let it be post object. And when I'm adding the sum item, so creating a sum item, it will return the object. That's why it should be observable and post object. And to return this client, to create a new object, you have to send a post request. That's why we want to send a post request to the base URL. So base URL, just posts. Link will be just posts. And that's it. And as a data, I want to use a post. As a data, I want to use a post. Okay, and this function should be used over here. This our service and add post function. And here I want to pass the post object, which is a post object over here. It might be like let posts, which is a type of post. And inside it, I want to get a title, which is this new post. let it be constant again. Let it be constant, and we want to pass it as an argument here. Inside of the post, we have the title. Let it be like an object. Okay, it's a constant, and here we want to get some typecasting, because so the post is just an object, and inside it we have only the title, because other fields we don't fill yet. And this post, I want to typecast it as an post class, post interface. That's why we have the keyword called as, which is a post, and this syntax is called just a typecasting of this object to the post object. Okay, that's it. For add posting, we have the post object as a new object, and we are expecting a 1. We have to subscribe it, and we want to get a 1 object from this result. And after that, I want to add this item to our list. This posts, so push our new added post. Let's log it again. Console log post that was added right now. Okay, let's check it. If you type something and click to this button, you will have the title ASD ID is 101. Why? Because we have only 100 items. And as you can see here, we are pushing to the end of our list. Because we have the push. So let's do it like these posts. I think we have the unshift function. Let's check it and write something and put the push. Okay, we're adding it 2 times. So after the adding, what we have to do is new post should be empty. So let's add our loader. So the loader should be equals to false. And after getting a data, loader will be equal to true. Okay, let's check it again. I'm typing something, clicking to the button, loading, and adding the new item. Adding the new item, clicking, and adding the new item. So from this side, so ID always will be 101 because it's just a simulation. If you refresh the page, it will be just skip it. Why? Because it's just simulation of the adding a new item. That's why the title will be returned as you send it, but the ID will be the 101 because we have the 100 items inside of this list. And they can be also skip it. They can be also return it. So they're deleted. Why? Because if you have the new items and if you delete this one, all the items with the 101 will be deleted. But it's just a simulation. That's why it's okay. Like this, you can add a new item to your list, depending on the task. So we have the 3 minutes. So for instance, inside of the posts, inside of the post, we have the one more thing. For instance, comments of the some post. For instance, post number 1, and we have the comments inside it. And you can do it by adding a new row. For instance, if you open these routers, you can add one more row here, which is a ID/comments. And let's generate component comment. So comments component, which is over here, will be our let's remove them without any components. So let's remove the components. So inside of the app model, let's remove the adding the component inside it. So without components, let's do it using the just string. So without any roads. At home, you can do it by using the roads also. But for now, we want to do it like after selecting the one and after opening the detail page. After opening the detail page, so over here, after the go back button, we want to add one more button. For instance, show comments. When we click to this button, show comments will be called. Inside of the show comments in the details page, we want to first of all, let's create an interface. So for the comments, we have the ID, name, email, body. So the expert interface comment ID, which is a number. What else? The name, which is a string. Email, which is also string. And body, if you need, which is also a string. Okay, this model will be created here. And inside of the detail component, we want to create comments lists, which is a not component, which is a comment. So this one, this component, and we want to import our models. And here we have the array. Comment is just the array. And inside of the details, we want to use a lay and ng if we have the component length, which means component length should be more than 0. In that case, so after clicking to the button, we want to show the ng4, so the let comment of comments. So comment ID, I think we have one extra M. So the comment name, let it be like one more data, or comment email. And that's it. If we have the comment on the web page, we will have the such like data. So the length is not defined because comments is not initialized. Let's initialize it inside of the component constructor, so that this comments equals to empty string. And we have the error here. Okay, after clicking to this, to the show comments button, we want to send a request to the service. Post comments. Post comments, we have the ID of the post, which is just a number, and we want to expect, which is observable, and comment, which is from model, and list of comments. We are expecting a list of comments. Return this client and get request to the base URL posts slash ID of the post slash comments, and this URL ID of the post slash comments. And that's it. This is just get post comments, and this function will be used over here. This post service gets post comments. We want to pass the ID of the post. In our case, it's just this post ID, and I want to subscribe it. We want to subscribe and expect the comments list here. Comments. After getting the comments, we want to just update this our array which was created here. This comments equals to comments. That's it. And after this, you can try to click to this button, and after that you will have the result. Other items, click to this button. You can also add one more loader here for adding the new items, for adding the comments. For instance, if I'm clicking to this button, you can show the detail information about these comments, showing the body of the comment and so on. You can extend your program as many as possible for getting such like requests, such like error. So one more thing, I skip it here. So catching the error, you have to learn about it inside the tutorial. We have the how can we catch the errors when we are sending a request to the servers. Also might be helpful for doing the application when you are developing the Angular applications. So like this you can do, and you have to finish your applications. So if you open our class notes, you will have here the link to the six lab work, which is also will have the same data, same application that we did today. You have to do by yourself, but here we have the albums list. Albums list also inside of this placeholder, JSON placeholder, because we don't have any backend side. So albums list over here, you have to list over this albums list. So your task is the same thing about page, home page, which are the static pages, but I don't have any markup here, but you have to mark up your home page and about page. And you have to do the CRUD application as we did for the albums from this URL, which means the list of albums can be getted from this URL. And delete button and clickable, as in our example, like clickable and open, we can open the detail page. Album ID, which is the detail page of the example. So information about the item, editable, like this. Editable should be a return back button, photos link. So, and as in our example, show comments, we are showing the comments on this page, but in your lab work, you have to add some link to the photos of the album. When I'm clicking to this photos link, you have to redirect it to the photos page, as we started today, adding the road to the showing the comments. And this URL should show the albums ID and photos. And photos can be getted like this: albums, one, photos, and this list should be shown in any format. This page will render all the images in any format. As you can do it with any format, you have to put the return back button and redirect into the home page. All the things should be done using the services as we did, album service. And this is the minimum number of the components that you have to create for your lab work. So this is end of our today's lecture. So if you have the questions, let's start discussing your questions, and let's go here. Any questions for now?
What is the difference between snapshot and road parameter?
Okay, let's open our details component. So the snapshot means when we creating one first time our component, in our case the tail component, snapshot will store all the data that we have inside of this component. It's just for the creation, for the initializing part. For instance, if I'm clicking to this button, the ID of the click it, in our case, it's just a 1. But inside of the detail page, for instance, inside of the detail page, if you will have, so let's copy, but we don't have. For instance, inside of the, let's try to like this. Let's try it like this. Router link. Let it be posts 1 to 3. 1 to 3. 2 to 2. I think it will work. Just to check it. So let's open a snapshot. So ng init we want to skip, and we want to show this part. Posts, okay, like this. Okay. Loading. So where is loading? So let's comment this loading also. What it says compiling. Oh, okay. So as you can see here, we have the component detail page, which shows the ID number 1. ID number 1, and in our case, we are using a snapshot. If you click to this link, so let's open again. Let's add these sharps. Skip it. And if you click to this button, to this link, as you can see here, we have the URL is changed to the 1, 2, 3, but selected item is not changed. Why? So because inside of the ng, the post detail component, we are using a snapshot. Snapshot means if you are opening some component, it means when I'm opening this component, I'm creating this component this component object for rendering it. But while I'm rendering, I'm using this one, which was passed for while initializing this component. But if in this component, if I have the different items here, for instance, which will also do the same thing, but the IDs are changing. As you can see here, which IDs are changing 1, 2, 3, but the selected item is not changed. Why? Because we are using a snapshot. Snapshot means it will just get the state of your component while it was initializing at the first time, and that's it. If you have to dynamically change it inside it URLs, it will not work. So let's comment this one and get using the subscription. And you will have here, let it be 1. And if you change, so let's do it not 1, 3. We don't have any ID because let's do it like 2, 3, and 4. We have such like IDs in the file. That's why let's do it like this. So okay, after opening the list, we have the detailed page of the 1. we open the subscribe. If I'm clicking to the second one, as you can see here, the second post detail was rendered and URL also rendered. Third, fourth, and so on. In such cases, in the detail page, if you have the dynamically changed URLs, the snapshot will not work. Why? Because snapshot will take only the first state of your component. And this is the difference between these two parts. As we don't have such like a URL inside of the, as we don't have such like links inside of the post detail, that's why snapshot also seems as a correct version of the using the same result. But if you don't have any links inside of the component, it's also the working functionality. But it might be difficult when we have such like examples inside it. So Yenur, can you understand the question?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, this is the difference between these two parts. But in our example, it seems like that the first one and second one they are the same thing. But why we expect and why we do it using the subscribe, because for this purpose. So let's do this one. Open the get objects. And this part. Also let it be like this. So I'm leaving these items also. Okay, it will work. Any other questions, guys? Okay, if you don't have any questions, so we can stop recording.